Hello and welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultra Stock channel. Thank you so much for being here. Brandon and I bringing to you guys today our official Copa America predictions. So you see it on his background, James Rodriguez, an Argentina jersey, Uruguay, a US one wrapped around him. Hopefully the US surprises people. But talking about surprises, maybe there's this one for you guys. It's our first ever giveaway we're announcing. So as you see right now on the screen, screenshot this. It's a bracket of Copa America, and whoever gets the closest is going to get a jersey of their choice from a country that is playing in Copa America. If you don't want to screenshot it and send it to us through Instagram, we're going to leave that link down below to follow us there. You can type it out here in the comments below. And yeah, let's see who gets the most accurate one. We know which ones are the leading horses in the race, so should be a good video. Straight to the point. We're going to speed through right here the most irrelevant, but also sets up the entire tournament of it. But the group stage, some people don't like to talk about it. They think it's obvious. Well, I think there's a lot to talk about. Braden, your choices, countries that do go through and make the quarterfinals, who are they?
All right, so for Group A, I have, to start it out, I think it's a pretty easy one for number one. Argentina, the reigning champs, the reigning world champs, and it's a pretty easy group, if we're going to be honest. I think it's the weakest group on paper, and it suits Argentina perfectly. 3 easy wins. If they don't in this group with 9 points, it's a major disappointment. I'll go as far to say that. I think they have very high expectations for themselves, as they should, as back-to-back international tournament champions. They even won the Finalissima, the made-up tournament against Italy. So obviously they have high expectations. This is probably Messi's last Copa America. So even though he did win it last time, got that weight lifted off his shoulders, he will still want to go out with a win. So I think they're going to be doing all they can, kind of like last World Cup, to win it for him. It was interesting because if you looked at a lot of the players' interviews, even they said they wanted to win the World Cup for Messi more than they wanted to win it for themselves. It just shows the team unity that they have, and I think it'll be more than enough to get them through this group. In first place, 9 points, easy. In second, I'm going to go for Chile. I think they have looked very good under the new coach Gareca, and that's a huge difference because before him, they were looking really, really poor in World Cup qualifying and in some friendlies as well, but they picked up steam, narrowly lost to France recently. I think they played them really well, beat Albania and Paraguay both by scores of 3-0, who are both very good teams. I mean, we saw today as we record this, Albania gave a very tough test to Italy in the Euros. I think Chile, in a relatively weak group, have just enough. Some new ideas coming in with a great manager that did overachieve with actually one of the other teams in this group, Peru, leading them to their Copa America final previously, a couple editions ago. I think Chile will have enough to get through in second, and I'll go for Canada in third. I think they'll underwhelm a little bit because I think a lot of Canadians will be hoping for them to get out of the group. Them also having a new manager, Jesse Marsh, the biggest rival of Greg Berhalter now. I think he has a lot of new ideas to bring to the system. We know his tactics from his times at Red Bull Salzburg, Red Bull Leipzig, and Leeds. And I think he's going to have just enough to get through in third, challenge with Chile, but ultimately fall just short. And then that leaves Peru, unfortunately, in last place. What about you, Yuri?
Well, I'm going to go with the obvious one. Not much to make up right here. It's going to be Argentina in first place, but I don't think they will win all their group stage matches. I think they have notoriously, even in Copa America in the past and at the World Cup, as we saw, they always seem to start really low. So I expect them to top the group, but the country that I'm going to have following them, this maybe is a hot take. I'm backing Greg's old rival right here. I'm backing Jesse Marsh, and for one reason only. I rate Chile. I think that Gareca is a good manager, but I don't really like the odds of Isla marking Alphonso Davies. And I think that Davies is a great player. I think that he's going to be the deciding factor. I backed him to get second spot somehow, and that would be nice. I hope that storyline carries on. And then in third spot, I have Chile. And yeah, sadly for Peru, I think that their glory years, that was a crazy Copa America. 2019 was insane. It comes to an end. They don't have Guerrero anymore, so I think that their best player has left. So now on to Group B. Who do you have going through of arguably another weak group?
Yeah, it's a weak group, but it's also the most unpredictable group because I think there is a legitimate argument that could be made for any of these 4 teams to go through from this group. I'll start out in first place, like Group A. I'm going to pick Ecuador. I think it's going to be the general consensus for them to top the group. I think they have a very strong and a very young team, kind of like the U.S. does. We saw at the last World Cup, they were 2 of the youngest teams and both performed pretty admirably, I would say, in the tournament. And with that experience under their belt, they're coming into this tournament probably as group favorites, and I think they'll live up to that expectations. I don't think they'll finish with all 9 points because they do struggle to score goals at times, but they have one of the best defenses. I think they have a sleeper pick for one of the best defenses in the entire world. That might be a hot take to say, but I think they're tied for the least goals conceded so far through CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying, which has carried them through the process so far. And we know Nkapie from Bayer Leverkusen, what a season he had with them. Caicedo at the 6, running things in the midfield from Chelsea, one of the most expensive transfers of all time, whether you think that was justified or not. And then so many other good young players. Of course, how can we not mention Kendry Paez, the 17-year-old wonder kid? He's going to be looking to have his real breakthrough at international level in this tournament. And I think overall they just have a strong enough squad and a good enough team chemistry to end up topping this relatively weak group on paper. And then in second, I debated about this for a while. I think there's two teams here that are really neck and neck. I think it's Venezuela and Mexico. Unfortunately for Jamaica, they have too much turmoil going around. It's like a soap opera watching Jamaica's federation at this point, and it's just sad to see because they have one of their most talented generations ever, and if they had everyone on the same page, they could really do well. But I think this tournament is just a little too soon. They need to figure some stuff out behind the scenes. So unfortunately, I'm going to have them in last. And then for second, I went back on forth for this one a lot, but I am going to have Venezuela. I'm going to back my Philadelphia Union boy, Jose Martinez, at the 6. And I think they've looked really good. A sleeper team in CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying. They got that draw with Brazil. That's their most famous result, but they've actually been very solid throughout the whole process. And I really think they have enough to capitalize on, well, I mean, it's their best generation, and it's Mexico's probably worst generation. Mexico are a shadow of their former selves. I mean, we know them as being reliable, even making a deep run in Copa America in the past, always making out of the group stage in the World Cup, which they failed to do for the first time in a long time at the last edition in Qatar. Jaime Lozano is not a great coach, and he made some questionable decisions in terms of the roster. I ultimately don't think the talent is there. The one thing they do have going for them is the home field advantage, because the games are in the US, and we always see Mexico fans pack out, truthfully, wherever they go in any tournament, but especially in the US, it's a quick trip for them. There's already a lot of them living here in the country, so they'll definitely be out in full force trying to back their team, but ultimately, I do think they'll fall short and finish third.
That's interesting because I thought that my picks are a little unorthodox right here, but I have the exact same thing right here. And the reason why I think it's a really nice storyline for Salomon Rondon, who has become an icon really in Mexico, wasn't too kind to your Philadelphia Union or the crew in the final of CONCACAF Champions. I think it's his last dance with his national team. But like you said, I will go with Ecuador in first place. I really like Preciado. I think he's such a good fullback. I think Ecuador is a really solid squad. I don't really trust this Mexico team. Honestly, the Lambo Jamie has crashed. That's a fact. And I think that if maybe they had a better coach, they have the human material to do better, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I have Ecuador in first and Venezuela in second. Now that brings us to the other side of the bracket, which unfortunately we find ourselves in, or maybe fortunately. I mean, if we want to get better, we need to beat the best and compete with the best. Do you think we have enough to eventually top this group? Who do you have going through on Group C, Braden?
Well, I think it's fortunately in terms of the group, because we do have one of the favorites. I think actually a lot of people have Uruguay winning the whole tournament, and we'll see if either of us end up taking that. But in terms of the rest of the group, with Panama and Bolivia are, there's no doubt about it, the weakest team in CONMEBOL. They did end up winning a game against Peru in World Cup qualifying, but without the home field advantage, they're nothing. I mean, we saw them absolutely be capitulated against Colombia in the friendly recently, losing 3-0. They lost to Ecuador as well, 3-1. They lost to Mexico's U23s in a friendly, who, by the way, that same U23s that just lost to Japan's U19s. So it's definitely not a good showing for Bolivia recently, and I can't see it continuing. Even I think Panama are stronger than them, which might be a hot take to some fans that follow CONMEBOL, because, I mean, Panama are pretty unknown quality, but I do think they have enough to at least get third and maybe even challenge. They have the players and the play style to give teams a good game. The problem is they have the attacking quality, but when they go forward, they miss their chances, and then it leaves them open at the back to counterattacks, which, I mean, we saw how the game between Uruguay and Mexico went. That's exactly how Uruguay played. They hit them on the counter, and it worked every single time. It's going to be the same as that, and hopefully the U.S. can adapt to that as well. Usually, the USMNT does pretty well against open teams that are trying to go for it. That's why we always beat Mexico. So I do think it'll be a pretty straightforward sailing for Uruguay and USA. I do think they'll both have 6 points by the final match day, where they will play each other for the top of the group. I think it'll be a pretty boring draw. Uruguay will end up topping the group on goal difference. USA will make it through in second. Panama third after beating Bolivia and giving a decent challenge to the other two teams. And Bolivia, unfortunately, I can't see anywhere else but fourth.
With Bolivia, I said in our preview with Pete that I thought Bolivia was really weak and they were done, basically. I didn't think they were this bad, but I'm going to go with the U.S. actually topping. Not because I think we're going to beat Uruguay right here or go insane. I just think that we're going to stack up against Bolivia. I think that Bolivia will put up more of a fight against Uruguay, and against us, I think there is a chance that they do underestimate the way that we play. And I just expect us to go through on goal difference and on soul bias as well, because why not? I hope that we go through in first, and I think that there is a chance there that there is a scenario where we do finish first. I expect Panama to be stubborn. I think that if they were a little bit more versatile with the way that they set up, they could actually pose a serious threat to us. I mean, we've seen we struggle with low blocks, but I don't think that will be the case. And Coco Carrasquilla and co, they're going to, be finished in third place. So that's who I have. USA in first. I really didn't learn my lesson with Colombia. Let's hope I'm right some way. So now that brings us to that group that Colombia is a part of. Brazil, Colombia. Who do you have going first, or is there a surprise going there, Braden?
Hey, you never know. Costa Rica, they are the kings of the underdogs. Never forget the World Cup in 2014 where they made it out of the group with Uruguay, with England, with Italy. That was a special run. And even in the last World Cup as well, those glorious 1.5 minutes where they were going through and Germany and Spain were going out. The streets will never forget that. But unfortunately, I do think their time is probably done. Keylor Navas did announce his retirement before the tournament, which I thought was a little surprising and unfair on Costa Rica, to be completely honest, because he has the quality to still be one of the best goalkeepers in this competition. And it would have been a perfect last dance for him, especially if they had somehow made it out of this tough group. But without him, I can't see them having any chance. I mean, even with him, they conceded 7 to Spain in the World Cup. So I think they're going to get absolutely obliterated, especially by the top tier teams in this group. Unfortunately, I have them last. Third and second could get a little interesting. I do remember the Copa America Centenario that was here back in 2016. Brazil, a lot of people forget, Brazil did finish third in that group. And maybe we could see a similar thing happen here. This is one of the weakest Brazilian teams I've ever seen personally. I think it's one of the weakest they've ever had, as we saw by the 1-1 draw that they had with the U.S. recently. But I do ultimately think they have enough talent. If they can just get it to click a little bit, they have enough to take down Paraguay, who they do have a couple of good players. We know Miguel Almiron, MLS legend, Newcastle star for a couple of years. He might be coming back to MLS, who knows, or going to Saudi Arabia, but he's still a quality player. And the Brighton wonder kid as well, Julio Enciso, he's an absolute top talent. But ultimately, it seems like all their talent is in the attack. The defense is a little bit suspect, I would say. And with the attacking quality Brazil and Colombia have, I think they should get through fairly easily. Paraguay in third, Brazil second, Colombia first. I do think, and I said this in our preview of the USA-Brazil game as well, I do think Colombia are a better team than Brazil. I was ultimately proven right by the results the USA had against both of them, and I think it will continue to prove true, just like it did in World Cup qualifying in this tournament. I think Colombia will beat Brazil pretty handily in this tournament. I'd go for a 3-1. That's just a shot in the dark. It's probably going to be wrong, but I think Colombia will top this group. Brazil squeak by in second.
I agree with you, sadly. I think for Costa Rica, I was so surprised that Keylor Navas announced his retirement. I think it would have been a perfect send-off, so that one doesn't make any sense for him. But even with him, I would have him last right here. Now, this is a hot take. You kind of foreshadowed this. People might think I'm going insane. If anyone that's Brazilian and watching this, me desculpa, mas o time é ruim pra caramba. I'm going to go with Brazil in third right here. It's a repeat of what happened in recent history when Paraguay actually knocked out Brazil. It was on pens that time around, and they actually ended up making a final in 2011 against Uruguay. And I actually the reason why I'm going to say this sounds completely insane, right? But I think that Gustavo Gomes, a player that plays in Brazil for the best team in Brazil, in my opinion, for Palmeiras, I think they're the best team in Brazil for the past 5 years. I think he has a lot of confidence, and he has said multiple times that they want to have a statement tournament. I think that they have enough to put a valiant effort. And sitting on a low block, Brazil has struggled in the past. They struggled even against Bolivia. They won that game, but they don't really create a vast array of chances against teams that just bunker. Their best showings were against England and Spain, where they're actually going toe-to-toe, and they had the opportunity to be on a low block, even against us, and we left a lot of open spaces. They still couldn't finish some chances, and were vulnerable at the back as well. So I'm actually picking for an insane run right here, where Colombia tops this group, winning all 3 matches, and Paraguay sneaks in second place. Insane. I can already picture my wife watching this and thinking I'm going crazy, but it is what it is. Now that brings us to the juicy part, knockouts, where one game decides your fate, really. So who do you have going through on the first quarterfinal that you picked, Braden?
So for my first quarterfinal, it's Argentina, who topped Group A, going up against Venezuela, the surprise package from Group B. Unfortunately for Venezuela, this is where they're somewhat of an underdog run in, Argentina. They're just too good for whoever they're going to end up, whether it's Venezuela, Mexico, Ecuador, Jamaica, it doesn't matter. They're going to the semifinals, probably the finals with ease. It's just how the bracket worked out. Horrible system, by the way, having the groups paired together on each side and having you go against your potential group mate in the semifinals. Horrible system, and maybe rigged for an Argentina-Brazil final. That's all I'm going to say. But moving on to the second quarterfinal matchup, which hopefully is a little bit more interesting than the last one, Ecuador and Chile. I think this would be a very intriguing matchup. I rate Chile under Gareca very highly, but I rate Ecuador a little bit higher. I think they have a great team going right now, and it's just going to continue to get better over the years. 2026 World Cup, I think they could really cause some surprises and make a real underdog run. And maybe this will be the preview of that. I do have them going to the semifinals, taking down Chile in a pretty close game. I wouldn't be surprised if this game does happen, if it went to extra time or maybe even penalties. But I'm going to ultimately back Ecuador to go through and take on Argentina in the semifinals. And then on the other side of the bracket, the tough side of the bracket, Uruguay is topping Group C, going up against, for me, Brazil. I know for you, it'll be a little bit different. But ultimately, I don't even think having Brazil in third is that crazy of a take, because I can't see a world where they get past the quarterfinals. And it sounds crazy. Maybe if they played the USMNT, they'd have a chance. But I think up against Uruguay, which is what I have, they have genuinely zero chance. It's not a good Brazil team. I mean, even Ronaldinho, one of their biggest legends, said he's not even going to watch or celebrate a win at Copa America, which is very indicative of how this team is playing. It's crazy that Matt Turner did that to him. But I do think Uruguay will have what it takes, and I don't even think this game would be particularly close either. They're a completely different team under Bielsa. I think he's one of the best managers in international football as of right now. And until his tactics get figured out, which eventually they will, but it's not going to be this tournament, Uruguay to the semis. And then for the other one, the one which a lot of our viewers will be anticipating, the rematch of the friendly, the embarrassment, Colombia versus the USA. I can't see this going a different way. I think it would be closer than 5-1, because hopefully Greg and the team would have learned from their mistakes in the friendly. They would have watched some film, learned from the Brazil game and the group stage games as well. And in a knockout game, if you lose 5-1 in a knockout game, I mean, that's grounds for sacking. That's grounds for half the team not getting called up again. It's an absolute embarrassment, but I do think it'd probably be a comfortable 3-1 for Colombia. I just think they're such a well-drilled team right now. Haven't lost a game in over 2 years, and I can't see that streak ending to the USA.
Very good reasons for your picks. I mean, first one right here, I have, sadly, Argentina against Venezuela. I mean, I completely agree with you. This is a match made in heaven for CONMEBOL to have an Argentina-Brazil final, and they make that sweet cash. But I think that Argentina will do their part. They're going to beat Venezuela right here. I mean, pretty handily too, in my opinion. Ecuador against Canada, I can't see Canada going through. I mean, valiant effort for them. Insane take by me as well. Now looking back at it, of them even making it this far, but I think Ecuador is really underrated. Really, really good squad, and I think that they showed at the World Cup they have a good level. They've been showing in qualifiers. I have them going through, so that will be a one semifinal right there. On the other side, on my even crazier take right here, the USMNT playing Paraguay. Don't things match up nicely when I make these little things? I mean, I had Italy in the final of the Euros right here, completely not biased, but the USA beats Paraguay, and I'm super happy about that. Moving on to Colombia against Uruguay, who I had in second. Somehow, I'm actually going to pick Uruguay to surprise everyone and beat Colombia. I think this is a very tough game. I think probably one of the best games for us to watch. I don't know if in terms of the fluidity of the game, but of the competitiveness, because I think both of these squads probably fancy their chances of winning, lifting the trophy, and I have Uruguay surprising Colombia and going through. So now things are in the final stages. Who do you have reaching the final, Braden?
Yeah, some bold takes there, and it's so nice how the bracket lined up for the U.S. I would absolutely love that to happen, a free run to the semifinals. No disrespect to Paraguay, but we did the same thing already, kind of a fraud run like back in 2016, but we'd take it. So going on to my semifinals, on the first side, the easy side, Argentina going up against Ecuador. I think undoubtedly the two strongest teams in this region. It just seems to work out so well for them two to match up in the semifinal, and I do think Ecuador would give them a tough game, but ultimately I think Argentina, they just have too much. I mean, they're so experienced, so much quality, one of the top three national teams in the world on paper and in terms of results. So I think they have basically a cakewalk run to the final, especially when you consider who's on the other side of the bracket. You've got, I would still consider Argentina to be the best team in this tournament, but the next four, 2 through 5, they're all on the same side. It's a little unfortunate. Maybe you can make the argument for Ecuador being ahead of the US, but that is what it is. We won't get to see them play, so we'll have to wait another day to settle that debate. Argentina in the final, and this is a very difficult one to predict because you had it in your quarterfinals, and I think that could happen as well. I have it in my semis. I think it is inevitable for these two teams to face because I do think they're the two most informed teams. It's crazy to say when you also have the current World Cup champions in this tournament, but I do think Uruguay and Colombia are the two most informed nations in this tournament, and I think they'll definitely face each other at some point. I can't see either of these teams losing to someone that's not each other. I've gone back and forth, but I think a lot of people have been picking Uruguay to be their dark horses to win, so much so that they've actually become the favorite to win in terms of a lot of people. Maybe Argentina have the betting odds, but I think Uruguay have a lot of the fan and public support. So I'm actually going to go with Colombia. I've been really impressed by them. I got proven wrong and humbled a little bit when the U.S. played them, and there'd probably be the same thing in the quarters as well. I think the fact that they haven't lost in 2 years, they just keep finding a way to turn out results. And that kind of thing matters in international tournaments. Even if you're not playing the best, which they've had in a couple of the games, particularly against Romania recently, they only won 3-2, but they got the job done at the end of the day, and that's the most important thing. And I think they will do that. This is a game that I would absolutely love to see go 120 minutes because watching these two teams battle it out for as long as possible would be an absolute joy to watch. And if it went to penalties as well, even better. But at that point, you can't even really predict. So I'm going to go with Colombia. I think they're slightly more informed. No one seems to be able to beat them at the moment. So we're seeing an Argentina versus Colombia final.
Okay, and on my side right here, we have, well, on one side, it's the same thing, Argentina against Ecuador. I think it would be a very tough game, actually. I predict this one, Argentina going through on pens, actually. They have enough personality and experience to pull through. I have them reaching the final right here. On the other side, USA versus Uruguay. Well, the dream run comes to an end. I can't be too deluded right here. I think that in a game that matters, a final in Copa America, I can't see, even with all my bias, I can't see any scenario where we actually beat them. I hope that we do. I hope that I'm proven wrong, but I think that I was very kind to have us going through to the semis right here already in the first place. Hopefully I'll take that, but I think that Uruguay has just too much really for us to handle, and we would go to that third place matchup that we reached last time around. Kind of a phony run this time around too, but hey, I'll take it. I think it's fine. And that sets up the final stages. So you have Argentina against Colombia. Braden, who lifts the trophy?
Yeah, and just for fun, I'll predict the third place game too. Uruguay beats Ecuador. Pretty simple. I think neither teams would be trying their best, I think, but Uruguay are a much better team. But that moves us to the final, which I think would be a very intriguing final to watch. Argentina, like I've said so many times, the current world champions, the current Copa America champions, looking to retain their title and win 3 straight international tournaments, which I think would be the first time since Prime Spain did it, back with the 2 Euros and the World Cup. I think it would be the first time since then. So big shoes to fill for Argentina, and one of the best teams in the world coming up against them, Colombia. And I think I'll say this. The one thing that concerns me about Argentina in this game, and I do think on paper, at least, they have the quality to win this game and retain their title, they haven't played a good team recently. The last good team that they've played, and no disrespect to Ecuador, I do think they are a good team, but in terms of winning this tournament, I don't know if they have a realistic chance, and I'm going based off that. The last real title contender for anything that they played came in November of last year when they had a window. They played Uruguay, lost 2-0 at home to them, so it just shows how good of a team Uruguay are. And they played Brazil as well, ended up beating Brazil, but like we all know, Brazil are not the Brazil of old. It's still a great win, don't get me wrong, but it came a while ago. Since then, they've played El Salvador, Costa Rica, Ecuador in a friendly, which they narrowly won, and Guatemala, where they even conceded to both Costa Rica and Guatemala. It's not been a very encouraging run of form. They have won all the games, yes, but it's very uninspiring opponents. And even in this hypothetical Copa America run that I have, and regardless of who they'd play, going up to the final, they wouldn't play any real contenders. I mean, look at their group. Chile are a solid team. Canada could surprise some people. Peru, sorry, they're not that great. None of them are real title contenders. And then if you look at Group B, anyone coming out of there, like I said, Ecuador are a good team, but the rest of them, they don't challenge for this tournament. And Colombia will have already had the experience playing Brazil in the groups, in my run, playing the USA twice in the friendly, and then in this tournament where it matters, and then playing Uruguay, who I think are the second best team in this tournament, behind Colombia, and beating them. I think they will have been battle tested. They will be ready. They'll be looking to avenge their defeat because their last defeat over 2 years ago did come at the hands of Argentina. I think they'll avenge that, and Colombia will be your Copa America champions.
Oh, wow. Hot take right there. I think it'd be their second ever Copa America. They won in 2001. Didn't even make the World Cup the following year, but maybe. I think that it's definitely possible. I mean, I feel like I did them hard right here by picking them to lose to Uruguay, but it's also no shame in that because Uruguay is a very strong opponent. And this final that I have set up right here, Argentina against Uruguay, it's a very old Clásico in South America. Some will say the original Clásico of South America. And I actually have Argentina winning again, even though I think that when it just comes to clutch and the qualifiers for CONMEBOL, I've learned that they can be very deceiving at times, and countries that go on to do really well at the World Cup barely qualified. And I think that Uruguay, although they have a very, very good squad, and I think that I could definitely see them winning this. If I had to bet money on this, I would pick Argentina to win. Also, you never know the amount of sus penalties they might get here and there. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I think they deserve that World Cup, but I think that this time around they may get a little push, honestly, just being completely honest. And also, my third place right here, I think becomes a lot more meaningful because we would be playing in it and we would lose to Ecuador if I had to bet money. So I'm actually picking us to lose to Ecuador. And at the end of this tournament, we're going to have the phoniest Copa America for the US ever. We would have beaten only team, honestly, Paraguay, and that's it, really. Because we would have beaten Bolivia and Panama and somehow found ourselves right here in the semifinals against Uruguay. And yeah, 2 losses to Uruguay and Ecuador. Overall, a solid tournament for the U.S. I don't know, the most Greg run that would keep him in the job until 2030 maybe. So after all is said and done, we saw the countries that we had going far or not. We're going to pick for fun right here and also let you guys pick it as well. Maybe it'll be a deciding factor if 2 people come to a close. Who is your top goal scorer, best young player, and best player of the tournament, Braden? Does anyone take 2 of the trophies?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one here. For best player of the tournament, I think you have to go with the best player of your winner, and that is Lucho Diaz, who is now an aspiring rapper. Spitted some bars on the Colombia hype song, Copa America, so extra points for that. But yeah, I think he is Colombia's best player. James was their best player of old, and he's still a very integral part to the team. But if Colombia do go far in this tournament, it's going to be on the hands of Lucho Diaz, and I think he'll have a great tournament, really announce himself to the world. I mean, he already has in some aspect, but announce himself as one of the world's best on the international stage, and ultimately take the golden ball, win the tournament. But for golden boot, I have something slightly different. I'm going to go for Lautaro Martinez from Argentina because I think, we've touched on this already, their run heading up to the finals is super easy. I think he could easily bag a lot of goals against a very weak Canadian defense. Canada could give them troubles on the other end. Yes, they have some talented players in the attack, but their defense is not the greatest. We saw that when they shipped 4 goals to the Netherlands recently. And I think Lautaro has the capabilities to bag a couple of goals. I mean, we've seen him do that in their friendlies this year already against weaker opponents. I think he'll do the same thing. Peru as well, he can grab a goal or two. Even against the likes of Chile and Ecuador, I think he could easily get another goal or two, end up the tournament with like 5 goals or so, and easily win the Golden Boot, even though in the final he'll probably miss a big chance that caused them to lose, because he seemed to do that a lot in the World Cup. It didn't cost them, thankfully for them, but he missed a lot of big chances. And I think he might even miss a couple more big chances in this tournament, but he'll have enough to win the Golden Boot. And then for best young player, I think I have to go with Kendry Paes. It's really between him and Endrick from Brazil, and I do think Ecuador will have a better run going to the semifinals, Brazil going out in the quarters, and Kendry Paes is an important part to their team. I think he'll get at least 1 goal in this tournament, and that will be enough alongside some other great play from him to ultimately win young player. It's a bit of a boring pick because he's such a hyped wonder kid already signed by Chelsea, but I do think this could be the tournament that he really announces himself.
Okay, I'm gonna pick a somewhat older player, 22 years old already, but they do qualify for it's U23. I'm gonna go with Pelistri from Uruguay. I think that he has stepped up big time for them. I don't really know why United don't have him ahead of Anthony, personally, but here I have the same thing. Lautaro Martinez as the top goal scorer. I think it was that bad. Very, very favorable run to the final. Messi as the best player, because I think that if he win this trophy, he's going to get best player of the tournament. It makes sense commercially. I think he is still such a good player, probably the best player in this entire tournament. So he'll be vital for them in winning the trophy, at least in my little scenario. And Pelistri on being a very integral part of a Uruguay squad that reaches the final if this bracket does turn out to be true. I think overall, even with some insane takes, I think my final is still realistic. But now it's time for us to look at your guys' picks right here. We're going to leave a little template below as well in the first comment with how you can follow if you just want to respond here on YouTube and not take the screenshot and send it to us on Instagram. But hey, if you want kind of a double entry, who knows? Make sure to follow us there as well. We'll be announcing we'll be referring back to this. This is going to be the only video that will count. So if you want to be a part of it, leave a comment here. If you leave one after the first round of matches, well, it doesn't make much sense. So if you want to be a part of it and compete for a jersey of a country of your choice, hopefully it's the US, then you need to comment down below or send it to us through Instagram, the template that we left. We're going to leave it here again on the screen. So thank you so much. Who knows? Unpredictable things have happened in soccer in the past. So let's hope for a great Copa America. Like, share, and subscribe it, and we'll see you next time.